Hello, everyone. Welcome. Our Tuesday night bird watercolor class.
Mhm.
So glad you're all here. I never know how many people are going to show up every week. So I'm glad you're here. We're painting the barn swallow. Beautiful, beautiful bird. This is the image that I sent to all of you. And you should have your drawing done. Now I chose this image so that we could really focus on these feathers and getting those shadows under the feathers to really lift up those feathers. Getting that shadowing under the wing and under the feathers creates a lot of dimensionality. And I just, I found this painting that I really liked of a barn swallow. And this was just something I saw on Instagram, but I really like how this artist painted her feathers. I thought that it was very well done and loose. So I just printed it out just so that I could see, that artist's technique. Everybody has their own technique on painting birds, and that's wonderful. But it's good to kind of look at other artists and see how other people do things to get some ideas or get some fresh ideas. But I do want to share a couple pictures of the barn swallow, especially their nests. Have you ever seen a barn swallow's nest?
No.
Okay, let's look at that. And maybe while we're waiting, so the two main colors we're going to use today are Prussian blue and burnt sienna, and maybe some Naples yellow. And the background, I was gonna do a sepia, like it kind of, so that it looked kind of old, like old paper. That was my image for this bird, just because they like to live in old barns and an old like a sepia or even any kind of brown, just to get kind of a like an old paper feeling in the background. That would be a good color to have, but any brown will do. I'm going to use a sepia. I mean, if you don't have Prussian blue, you can use phthalo blue, Winsor blue. Any of those are going to work for today's painting. Maybe even a little indigo or Payne's gray for some darkness. Oh, here, I'm going to share my screen. So here's some images of their nests, and they make their nests out of mud. Can you see those?
How cool.
They almost look like wasps' nests. And they're
Mhm.
usually up in the rafters, up in barns. And, I go out to Salvie Island quite a bit to go bird watching, and I always see barn swallows. They're really common. But up in the corners, you can see they make these nests out of mud and straw.
Hmm.
Really cool. And then let's just look at a few images. So they're about the size of a sparrow. And we can look at the size chart on All About Birds. They're about the size of a sparrow. When perched, the sparrow-sized barn swallow appears cone-shaped with a slightly flattened head, no visible neck, and broad shoulders that taper to long pointed wings. The tail extends well beyond the wingtips, and the long outer feathers give the tail a deep fork. So I love the shape of these swallows when they're in flight. That shape of their long tail is really cool. I almost chose a picture like that today. But we're next month we're gonna do some more swallows. Here in Oregon. Well, next week we've got the violet green swallow, which is a beautiful bird, totally different tail. Um, there's a tree swallow, also totally different tail, doesn't have those long tips. But out here we get the swifts in the chimneys, and their tail's even more different. So we're going to get into doing a chimney swift in March. and more birds in this category. And it's just so interesting that they're all swallows and they all have different kinds of tails. And that's a really important thing to note when you're bird watching and understanding that when you're out there and you see a bird flying in the air, it's hard to know what it is, but looking for those shapes of the tail and the wings is really helpful. So let's just look at a couple pictures just to look at the blues and the colors and the feathers. So there's all kinds of that iridescent blue in those feathers. So I thought that Prussian blue would be nice, and Prussian blue mixed with burnt sienna creates a nice neutral gray. So we can get some variations with that. I love the color of the breast of this adult barn swallow. Unfortunately, we don't see the breast in our photo today, but that's a beautiful color. There you can also see a lot of iridescence in that blue. It's almost like a dark, dark blue. And I love the shape of that long wing and that long tail. That's a gorgeous color too. That would be a little more on the cobalt side and maybe some ultramarine blue. So we can kind of experiment with blues today. What blue that you have. And sometimes they appear a little bit more on the neutral side. Now the orange in this bird isn't as bright as that Lapland longspur we did last week. So I think just burnt sienna is enough for this one today. And look at that, gorgeous. That looks like it's oh no, that's an adult. That's a different kind. That we're doing the American barn swallow. This is a Tytler's barn swallow. Beautiful. So I'm excited to do this one with you today. So let's get started. I'll switch over to my web camera. And please, feel free to ask any questions throughout the class. If you have trouble with color or need any feedback, just let me know. Okay.
Is burnt sienna gouache different? I don't know why I picked a gouache up. Gouache.
Gouache.
Gouache,
Yeah, it's different. You might want to return that.
I already been using it, but I didn't know why. I just looked at it.
Oh, it's very matte,
Yeah.
opaque compared to the watercolor. I mean, you can use it. You won't get that transparency, but if you've been using it already.
Well, I have some of the other, but very little left in the tube.
So this is that Prussian blue. So this is Prussian blue, and I did some color swatches. Oh, I was practicing a Lewis's woodpecker this weekend. It's for a special event that I'm doing. But these are the three swatches. This is Prussian blue, Windsor blue, and phthalo blue. They're very similar and they can be, interchanged. But I kind of like that deepness of the Prussian blue. It's not quite black and it's not quite as bright as the phthalo blue. That one, get that. Yeah, that's just a little bit more, I don't know, more bright. I like the deep and the richness of that Prussian blue, but any of those colors are going to be fine. And then here I was experimenting, and I'm using the Daniel Smith Prussian blue, and I have these little extra trays here that I've been using for my special colors. And they're only like $1 at the art store. And it's nice if you don't have that color in your palette to put it on a separate tray. And sometimes I'll even mark it, Prussian. I was wondering if there was a Prussian green. I was gonna look into that. There probably is.
There is, yeah.
There is.
It's really pretty too. I'll see if I can find mine.
Yeah.
I got it because it's a color that John Singer Sargent used a lot.
Oh yeah.
Had to have it.
Yes, he's a great watercolor
Yes.
painter. I have his book.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm painting birds, of course, I refer to my printout, but I also look at it on my iPad because sometimes the colors are different. Like, I'll even show you on my iPad. See, the colors look so much brighter
Hmm.
than the printout. Look at that difference.
Oh, yes. That's
Yeah.
good.
So I really, and also on my iPad, I can also zoom in
Oh,
really close to look at the eye. So that really helps me a lot. So this is the Prussian blue, and we may not even need indigo because it gets so dark. Prussian blue, and then burnt sienna. Now to get these rich, deep colors, if you have fresh paint squeezed on your palette, that always helps. Or at least spray your paints down and let them get juicy and a little bit more liquefied, because then you can really start to get more saturated color and see what those colors look like fully saturated on your paper. And then, so here on my palette, I have Prussian blue. So this is called a color trail. So I've got burnt sienna here, and then I have Prussian blue over here. And then you can start to mix them in the middle and get a color trail. And you can do this on paper or you can do it on your palette. But then you can see that, how those colors start to mix together. Now that looks a little more that's a nice gray, but if you added a little more burnt sienna to it, it might be a little bit on the warmer side. So we'll work with that color combination. And then let's just look at indigo blue, just as a dark today. And I just want to see what that color looks like next to my Prussian blue. See, that's really dark. And then a little bit diluted. So looking at indigo blue, and if you don't have indigo blue and you have Payne's gray, see what that looks like, even if you have both, and look at both of them next to each other, because you really can't see the difference until you see it on the page. Payne's gray is definitely more on the gray side. But we might need to go into one of those darks, especially around the eye and the head and the face, and some of those dark shadows. We'll use some of that darker color. And then we're going to use some sepia or some kind of brown for our background. And you just need a little bit because we're going to really wash that out. And just get a really light glaze of sepia in there. And you know, we could even bring, I mean, we could bring some sepia into those longer, warmer tails too, and mix that in with some of our Prussian blue. And then for that stump, well, we can just keep that really simple. We might mix a little Naples yellow with the sepia to get that stump color. So Prussian blue, burnt sienna, indigo blue or Payne's gray, sepia, and Naples yellow. That's our color palette for today. And definitely have a scratch paper by you so that you can test your colors before you put them on your painting. And I just have some cheaper watercolor paper here that I use. So let's gosh, and you know, if you have a little bit of cobalt blue, let's just start with that little glare in the eye. It's not quite cobalt blue, but I feel like using a different blue in that reflection in the eye, other than the blue we're going to use in the feathers, is going to be better. Now cobalt, I'm just going to get that in there first. And very diluted, just a really little bit of, because there's like a bit of white and blue in there. So just getting that in there. And you could really water it down and maybe get it a little bit darker on one side. Just a tiny bit of cobalt. And then that ring around the eye, there's a light ring. I'm also going to do that in cobalt. Getting that really light color in first. Very diluted. And while we're at it, let's just put a little bit of cobalt in the top of that beak. Very diluted. Just using a small brush. So let's let that dry, and then let's do our background, because I want to do a very light background, and then those dark feathers are going to lay right on top of that dark background. So getting a larger wash brush for your background can be, I don't know, depending on the size of your paper, a 1-inch wash brush is nice. And let's just get that paper wet. And it doesn't need to be soaking wet. We just want to kind of loosen up the paper and have a nice damp surface when we put that sepia or that really light brown in there. And I found that sometimes when I wet the paper and then I put the paint on, it has a little bit more of a granulation. And oh, well, if you have a brown that granulates, that would be a great thing to use too. I think I do have one of those. Daniel Smith makes that line of genuine colors that granulate. Do have, it's called like mummy benzenate or something, or your sepia, or just a light, just to get that kind of old weathered look. And really light. Just try to get it look like kind of old parchment paper. And you know, having that paper wet ahead of time, it really allows that paint to flow across your page. I'm just going to leave that stump white for now. And get that, you know, get your light brown right up to the edge of your bird. And even if it overlaps a little bit, it's fine because a lot of that bird, except for that white breast, which I just got, that you want to leave the white of the paper. There's a little bit of that white breast showing. But the rest of it is going to be really dark blue. So if that background overlaps a little bit, it's just fine. And try to get that on there while it's wet, so you don't get too many brush strokes. Now, sometimes if I see I'm getting some brush strokes here, I'll use my little spray bottle and spray it. And then let that water move your paint around. So you get a nice even wash in your background. It's never going to be perfectly even because it's watercolor. But even if it has a few little imperfections, that's fine because I'm trying to go for the old look. And then if you have a hair dryer or a heat gun, you can go ahead and dry your background. Now, if your paper is starting to like, I can't think of the word. If your paper is starting to curl and the water is kind of cooling up in those little crevices of the paper, keep it moving because you don't want it to sit in a puddle on your paper. So I'm just going to mute you for 1 minute while I dry my paper with a hair dryer. Okay. And then I sometimes wipe off that excess paint off my tape. Okay, so there's our background and if you've dried it, that's good, especially just around the edges. But also I find, you know, if your background is drier, sometimes if you rest your hand on it or something, it makes it a little bit easier. So next, let's go with our burnt sienna and get those light colors in the neck and in the head. And if you look closely at the picture, you'll see that there's, you know, some shading in there, but we'll get that lighter version of the raw burnt sienna in the neck, and the top of the head. And then we'll kind of start to build up some of those shadows. So just, you know, make sure your background is dry here. And we'll start to get those nice rusty colors. I would say use a smaller brush. A 6 round would be nice. My 6 round, my 8 seemed a little big. Now, while that's wet, you can go to your color trail on your palette here and go in the middle part where that Prussian blue and burnt sienna have been mixed. And you can use that color to get that darker shadow that's right under the beak. And getting that in there while it's still wet, you're going to get it to blend really nicely with that burnt sienna with a nice soft edge. And get that shadow in there right from the start. And that orange section up at the top. And if you want your burnt sienna just a touch bit brighter, you could add just a little bit of your transparent Paro orange in there to get that a little bit brighter. Seems like just a bit brighter on the top part. Sometimes burnt sienna isn't quite as bright as I want it to be, so adding a little bit of that transparent pyrrole orange helps brighten that up a little. Now the top part of the head has a lot of light reflecting on it. So we want to go start into our Prussian blue and really dilute it. So it's not that intense. So that's just the pure Prussian blue there. And I'm getting that in next to that burnt sienna when it's still wet so that they can start to blend a little bit with each other, and then they overlap. That creates a little bit of a darker shadow there. I'm slowly just starting to bring that down. And, note where we painted that cobalt blue on that, it looks like kind of an eyebrow. Let's just paint around that. And I'm still just in my Prussian blue right now. And starting to kind of build it up a little, getting a little bit more darkness in there as it comes in and around the eye and towards the beak. That shadow is much darker. And then I'm gonna start to darken up that Prussian blue with some indigo or some Payne's gray, because it does start to get a little bit on the blacker, darker side. So you could mix a little bit of your indigo or your Payne's gray. Where it starts to get really dark around that beak. And around the eye. And I'm just using a really small brush right now. So I don't lose those light marks around the eye there. Let that indigo start to blend with your Payne's gray, your Prussian blue. And I'm working, I'm working on my edges where those colors meet. I'm trying to, you know, get those edges so that they kind of work together with each other. A little bit softer edges. So if you start to get a hard edge with your burnt sienna, you can go back in and add a little bit more there. So when things start to dry, they look much lighter, and that Prussian blue and indigo is so intense. You may need to get that burnt sienna a little bit more brighter. Even get that beak, bottom side of the beak in there dark. And where I paint that cobalt before, it's just a little bit too light. So I'm just darkening that up just a little bit, especially on the top part. Just working really carefully on that head. And I'll show you mine up close. Light, there we go. You know, I feel like this last series, these last few birds from the snow bunting and the Lapland longspur and this swallow, I've been really trying to get very detailed in the heads, and I really like that carefulness. And then getting a lot looser in the feathers. Even the beak.
What color are you doing in the beak?
It was just a little cobalt on the top. And then indigo blue on the bottom. Really get those darks as dark as they need to be right from the start. And now we're slowly going to move down into those feathers. And I'm just using my very small brush here to get some of those feathers wisping off the side of the head there. So now I'm gonna start in with this, there's a dark shadow right underneath that burnt sienna, and I'm gonna go right in with some of my indigo blue. So here I have another trail of paint. So here I have my burnt sienna to Prussian blue here. Here I have indigo blue to Prussian blue so that I can get some variation in those two colors mixed together. Now this dark shadow here is very dark. And as it meets that, as it comes up against that burnt sienna, that edge is very important. It has a little bit of a rough edge. So you can kind of go in there with your little brush and get that edge roughed up a little, so it's not so straight. So we've got that dark shadow in there, and it's kind of like a collar that goes around that neck and then tapers off a bit towards the back. And then that's going to feed into some brighter Prussian blue. And get my little bit bigger brush here. And we're going to work our way down with these feathers.
Is that just the Prussian blue?
I've got indigo at the top, and then it's Prussian blue. And I'm starting to dilute it a little bit to get some of those lighter feathers. And I think, as we come down, And when we start to get to those longer feathers, it's okay to leave a little bit of white space. And also to change your blue. But I'm gonna get that Prussian blue in there first. All the way down the back. Then we get to those longer feathers. I'm going to start mixing my Prussian blue with my burnt sienna here and get a bit of a different shade for those longer feathers and leave some space in between them. Now here I'm just using my 8 brush. So, whatever brush fits the size of those feathers. And leave some white space between them so that you can differentiate each feather. Now, don't forget to leave those white feathers in the breast there. That's the white of the paper, so don't paint that. Look at those colors blending together. It's beautiful.
What did you use for the darker, like blackish front wing?
I've got a little bit of indigo in there.
With your Payne's Gray?
That's my indigo blue, a little bit of indigo in here. I kind of mixed up my color trails here, so I've got my Prussian blue, indigo blue, and burnt sienna combination.
Okay.
And I'm kind of tipping my paper up towards that really dark shadow under the neck there, so that really dark paint just kind of pools up and makes that really dark. Maria, I forgot you were here. I haven't had you in this class in a while.
I'm here.
Good. So fun to paint birds. This is such a gorgeous bird. All right, we're going to keep coming down. Those long feathers, and maybe they even start to have a little bit more shape. Beautiful. And those variations are really, really important here. Have some different combinations of these colors layering into each other. Now, getting down to those tips of the tail, those tips are really nice and long. And keeping them nice and long and thin. Getting those darks in there, those dark shadows. You know, some parts are still a little wet, so you might need to let them dry. That dry. So you're really just starting to shape things and layer. Gonna let that dry. How's everyone doing? Good?
It's a lot of details when you start to really look at it.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be exact, you know, as long as you've got some of those shapes of those wings, the shape of that wing, long lines.
How do you
And
get the white breast to show up?
The white breast,
Yeah, do you put anything in there?
not yet.
Not yet, but later, okay.
We may have to go back into the background again
Uh-huh.
to get that to show up. But you know, we're also gonna do the leg. So I'm gonna start on that leg and add a little more burnt sienna to my mix here. Now, there's some white feathers. Just gonna paint that bottom part of the leg, and you can kind of feather up against that white a little with that leg to get
Okay.
a bit of a white feather there. It's just a small amount. And you can use a little bit of your indigo to get that shadow underneath those toes. And the claws are just a little bit darker. I'm just using my blues there. So I had a little bit of my sepia from the background here, and I just took a little and just feathered it up against that white. And just darkened that up just a little bit right there. And I can kind of blend it in with the background so we don't have to go into the whole background again. And then that stump, I'm just going to start by just kind of outlining it a little. Just using that leftover sepia here in that wood. Wonder what that looks like mixed with a little bit of Naples yellow. Touch of burnt sienna. I don't want to do a lot on this stump. I just want it to be very subtle in there. Sorry, my dog is going crazy about something. Mm. just, so I got this very light color on the wood and just adding a few little bits of darker grays and browns in there while it's wet. There's a little bit of a shadow, so I'm just using some of my grays, blue grays for that shadow. I just got that all in there really wet, wet on wet, and was just kind of loose with it. I think getting that shadow under the wing there is really important. It's my wood up close. I just kind of let it drip a little. Getting that shadow under there is really important. I feel like it really lets that bird sit down on that stump. And even getting that shadow under the leg there, and that foot. Shadow on the leg. That really dark. So we have so many darks going on in this bird. The shadow needs to kind of balance that out. darkening up those claws. But careful where it's wet there. Okay, so some things that need to be addressed. I'm gonna leave that wood for now. It's pretty wet right now, so I'm missing this shadow here behind that wing. So now this is dried a little, so you can go back in and get a few more of those dark lines.
Did you finish the eye? With indigo?
I I need to go back into the eye. I'm just doing the shadows on the wing right now. Few dark lines here. Getting those dark lines in there really help to lift up. And if it's too much white, you can go back in with, a different color, and sometimes that white is too stark. So just a little bit of a paled paint, Prussian blue here. You don't need to do too much. It doesn't have to, I also like the looseness of that first wash, and I don't want to overwork it. Now, if you wanted to go back into the eye, could go in and define that black pupil a little more with a nice dark Payne's gray or black. And if something's dried and they're not quite dark enough, like that part under the neck, I kept trying to get that really dark and dried much lighter. That, well, okay, I kind of messed up my dark feathers there a little bit. I need to let it dry. Too much. called? Okay, kind of helped a little. Just added a little cobalt in there. Definitely overworking this. I'm gonna just mute you for 1 second and I need to dry this and okay, I I love I love dark darks and I sometimes overdo it with my darks. I think I saved it though. I kind of liked it before I started fiddling with those wings. Hey, I really like how my head turned out. I don't think I'll go into it anymore. I think I'm about done, but I do like the how the head turned out. This part got a little overworked. All right. How's everyone doing? Does anyone want to
I'll start.
Okay,
I overworked mine also.
you did.
Because I never get dark enough right off the bat, you know? And then I have to keep touching it and touching it,
Hmm.
you know.
Beautiful though. I love the difference between the
Oh,
brown
yeah.
feathers and the blue.
Oh, thank you.
That, that looks
Yeah,
great.
I kept changing my mind about what color those feathers were. I'm like,
Hmm. And
are
I
those
like
feathers
that.
brown or are they blue?
Yeah, hold that up again, Laura. It's so nice.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful.
Nice.
Really nice.
Thank you. I drew it freehand and I think I made his body a little too long, but I'm not gonna quibble. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun to do and finally did a swallow.
I
It's
love
just, it's a
color.
tall one. It's
Yeah.
just tall.
He's extra tall.
They
They're tall.
are long and
They are
tall,
long, yeah.
dark,
Yeah.
and what was
I
I
see a lot of tree swallows around here.
Hmm.
Not so many barn swallows.
Well, let's do some more swallows in the next few weeks.
Yeah, they're fun. They're beautiful.
All right, Mom.
Thank
Oh, beautiful.
Oh wow. Nice. Nice
Nice.
start.
Yeah, really nice and loose. Did you use some purple?
Yeah. I see purple in this picture. I know
Yes.
it's kind of a brown, but it looked purple to me, so I thought purple would be really cute. That's the Prussian violet.
Oh,
Ooh,
beautiful.
Prussian violet. Ooh, there's a color I don't have.
Mm.
No, that's the, wait, I'm sorry, Windsor violet. The
Windsor
Windsor.
violet.
I
Yeah,
love
Windsor.
Windsor violet.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to get dark. The eye is beautiful too.
Yes, and I love that orange like, up against the blue. It's a nice
Yeah.
contrast.
Thank you. Well, I had this big piece of paper and its arches, and I wanted it to be special.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, beautiful. It's
Thank
really
you.
nice. I think, Mom, you need to work a little bit more on your talons.
Yes, no, I can't seem to get them yet, but I got to make them longer. That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Longer and a couple of different colors.
Your tree stump is nice.
Yes, the tree stump is in the background is nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I did
like
the
the
white.
subtleness between the wood and the background. It doesn't stand
Mhm.
out too much.
That's true.
That-
Yeah.
It doesn't stand out, or it's okay.
Oh, it's good. I don't think
Yeah,
the
that's
wood
good.
should stand out. It's like
Good. I put a little bit of when you said to use this color for that for the tree trunk, I put a little burnt sienna in it, I think.
yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I'll work on my talons.
Oh. I overworked mine.
Maggie, beautiful.
Ooh.
Oh, it's beautiful and different.
Wow.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
I end up using a lot of white
Ooh.
gouache to try and fix stuff I've messed up.
Oh, good.
Wow.
And even though I traced it, he still has kind of an awkward, something really awkward about his head and neck.
Mhm.
But I like the feet.
Yes, those
I'm pretty good at
Yeah.
bird
really
feet.
good. They're really sticking to the wood. And I also love the shadow under the beak,
Oh, thank
Mm.
you.
around the eye. Which blue did you use, Maggie?
Well, I only had phthalo blue and ultramarine.
Yeah.
So I mixed the phthalo with a little bit of burnt sienna to try and get Prussian
Mm.
blue.
Mm.
And then it was a little bit not very bright in the super bright area. So I used the ultramarine.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's really brightens it up.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Looks great.
Beautiful colors.
Yes.
Thank
The
you.
shadow on the wood is nice too. It really
Oh.
makes it that shadow, and I love the looseness on the wood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
It'll look even better when you take the blue tape off, because that kind of distracts from the blue of your bird. So when you take
Ah,
it off, it's gonna look really nice.
Mm.
well, thank you.
Good job. Nice work. Michelle, are you there? Would you like to share?
Here.
Oh, hi. Oh, it looks so nice.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Gorgeous. Look at that head and the
yeah.
eye.
The head
Cool.
is amazing. It's got real character.
It does.
Wow.
Nice.
Ni- Yeah. Really nicely. The darks are wonderful.
Mhm.
It's not too much dark.
Oh, looks dark to me.
You know
And
what,
I love the tree trunk.
Michelle?
Oh.
The back side of the bird is much lighter than that dark underneath. So I would
Mhm.
just glaze that over just a little bit, just so that it's a little less contrast. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
back versus the black underneath.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
glaze that a bit with it. Did you use Prussian blue?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, nice. Yeah, just a light glaze over that, so it kind of it has less contrast and it has more of a subtle difference.
Okay.
And I think
I'll add some.
that's a winner painting. The head is amazing.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Good. Thank
Nice.
you.
Nice,
Another
Michelle.
fun one.
Beautiful. You're getting so much better,
Thank you.
everybody. Marie, would you like to share?
Sure. Let me see if I hopefully it won't.
Mm,
I don't know if you can you see that? There you
nice,
go.
Oh,
Marie.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
beautiful.
Another
Beautiful.
beautiful head. Wow. It's
I tried to
gorgeous.
leave quite a bit of light and whiter spots, but yeah, it's really hard to get the details and also
Yeah.
keep it loose at the same time. Really hard.
Great foot too.
Yes, the foot is
Yeah.
great and your
Mhm.
wood, and I love the orange and the head. I like that it's a little darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's just this was a tough one,
Mhm.
but yeah, it was really fun to paint though.
Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Fun to work with the blue colors, you know.
So Marie, will you bring that to class tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Marie's in my in-person class tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
Tomorrow we're doing 2-minute minis. We're doing clouds and really quick clouds.
Mhm.
I love
I
doing those
highly
quick
recommend that
things.
in-person classes if people have time to go to them or are close enough to go to them.
Yeah.
Lots
Yeah. I
of
wish
fun.
I were closer.
Marie's, you're coming to my home studio this weekend too. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I can't wait. Sounds really, really exciting. So
That's cool.
Oh, I have to send the picture out for our Thursday lake class soon.
Mm.
I'll try to do that tonight. It's been a long day. I gave up my day job so that I can focus on my teaching, my painting.
Oh, wow.
So today was the last day of my day job.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
are you happy? Are you happy that you did it, or are you sort of not so sure?
No, I'm happy. I liked that job, but I wasn't making a lot of money. And I liked everyone I worked with. I liked getting out of the house and going to work and being with my coworkers and just working normally like a normal person.
Yeah.
And I did like that a lot, but I feel like I need to pay more attention to my classes
Yeah.
and my
Mhm.
painting, and I haven't been doing that.
Oh.
I mean, I have been, but I want to be a better teacher and a better painter. So
Oh,
requires time and practice and
yeah.
advertising, marketing, and that's where I'm really
Yeah.
slacking now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Marketing,
you can spend that time growing your business.
growing my business. Like so many people could come to this class and it would
Oh,
be,
yeah.
I would
Right.
love to grow this class in particular because I love painting birds and people love painting birds. So
Yes.
I have to reach out to the world of millions of people who would love this class.
I know.
So, yep, I'm excited about my new focus.
That's
Better.
great. Yeah, it's frustrating when you have a lot of ideas for painting or things you want to do in your art and then you don't have the time.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, I'm excited. Thanks.
great.
Thanks to everyone for always being so supportive and
Oh.
um doing this. I love you guys.
We're really
Well,
happy to be in class.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're a
Yeah.
great teacher.
Thank you.
Definitely.
You're an inspiration to everyone.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
And very, very generous.
Yeah. Well, next week we've got the green violet swallow, another beautiful bird.
Yeah.
So beautiful
It's amazing.
colors. Maybe I'll see if I can get some Prussian green. I like the oh, that wasn't Prussian violet. It was Windsor violet.
You're valid,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I might have to go to the art store.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the color that I have marked on my palette is actually Prussian green, not Prussian blue.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really?
So I need to go to the art store too.
and maybe refresh your palette sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
You can pop the colors out if you don't use them and put
Mhm.
new colors in.
Definitely helps to put a little fresh paint on top of the crusty stuff.
For sure. You'll get much brighter, more intense colors if you really get some fresh paint in there once in a while.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, have a
All
wonderful
right.
evening.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Good
you.
night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.